In the frozen heart of the wilderness, a battle-scarred military K-9 was left to die, until a lone wolf did something no one saw coming. This is not just an animal story. This is about loyalty that defies nature, a bond that will shake you to your core. Dramatic pause. Cut to Ghost. The wolf, standing over Kaiser, then flash forward to Kaiser's reunion with his handler, both men crying. Have you ever witnessed animals showing unbelievable compassion? A pet that saved you? A wild creature that showed mercy? Comment below. I read every story, and if this video wrecked you like it wrecked me, smash that like button, subscribe, and let's go viral for these unsung heroes. The frozen forest was a graveyard of silence. Snowflakes drifted lazily from the steel-gray sky, settling over the broken body of Kaiser, a once fierce military K-9, now reduced to a shivering heap in the snow. His golden fur was matted with blood and ice, his breaths shallow and labored. 3 days had passed since the ambush, since the gunfire, the smoke, and the last glimpse of Captain Vance being hauled onto the evacuation chopper while Kaiser was left behind. The memory burned worse than his wounds. He had tried to follow. He had dragged himself through the mud, barking weakly, but the engines had drowned him out. Then the pain had taken over, and the cold had seeped into his bones like poison. Now, as the wind howled through the pines, Kaiser accepted the truth. He was going to die here, alone. A shadow moved at the edge of his fading vision. Kaiser's ears twitched, but he lacked the strength to lift his head. The footsteps were too soft for boots, too deliberate for a deer. Then, a scent. Wild. Musky. Wolf. A massive, silver-coated wolf stepped into view, his amber eyes gleaming with an intelligence that sent a primal shiver down Kaiser's spine. This was no ordinary predator. His muzzle was scarred, his fur patchy with age, and yet he carried himself like a king. For a long moment, the wolf simply stared, as if weighing the life before him. Then, impossibly, he lay down beside Kaiser. The warmth was immediate. The wolf's body radiated heat, his thick fur shielding Kaiser from the biting wind. Confusion flickered through Kaiser's fading mind. Wolves didn't help. Wolves didn't care. Yet here this one was, curling around him as the storm raged on. As darkness crept in, Kaiser's last thought was not of war or commands, but of the wild creature who had chosen mercy over instinct. And for the first time since the ambush, he didn't feel alone. The wolf stayed, and because of that, Kaiser lived. Dawn broke in pale streaks of gold across the snow, and Kaiser stirred. He was alive. The wolf, Ghost, stood over him, breath fogging in the frigid air. The storm had passed, but the cold remained, gnawing at Kaiser's wounds. His leg was still useless, his body stiff with pain. Yet something in Ghost's steady gaze told him the ordeal wasn't over. The old wolf took a step back, then another, his eyes never leaving Kaiser's. Follow. Kaiser understood. He had spent his life obeying commands, but this was different. This was a choice. Gritting his teeth, he dug his front paws into the snow and dragged himself forward. Every movement sent fire through his ribs, every breath was a struggle, but Ghost waited, patient as the mountains. The journey was agony. The snow deepened in patches, forcing Kaiser to push through with brute determination. His paws, raw and bleeding, left crimson smears in his wake. Ghost moved ahead in slow, measured steps, glancing back often, as if measuring Kaiser's will. Hours blurred together. The forest seemed endless, the cold unrelenting. Kaiser collapsed more than once, his vision swimming, but each time Ghost returned, nudging him with a wet nose or a low, rumbling growl. Not yet. Not here. Then, as the sun dipped toward the treetops, the trees thinned. A narrow valley opened before them, sheltered by ridges of stone. A frozen stream cut through the clearing, its surface glinting under the fading light. Tracks, Deer, rabbit, wolf crisscrossed the snow. This was Ghost's territory. Kaiser collapsed at the edge of the clearing, his body spent. Ghost circled him once before lifting his muzzle to the sky. A howl, deep and resonant, echoed through the valley. From the shadows, other wolves emerged, younger, leaner, their eyes sharp with curiosity. They sniffed the air, ears flicking at Kaiser's foreign scent. One, a dark-furred male, bared his teeth. Ghost moved between them, his growl a warning. The pack hesitated, then backed away. As night fell, the wolves settled in a loose circle around the clearing. Ghost returned to Kaiser's side, his warmth a shield against the cold. For the first time in days, Kaiser slept without dreaming of gunfire. He had survived the wilderness. Now, he had to survive the pack. The forest had been peaceful for days, until the crack of a twig snapped Kaiser awake. His ears pricked forward, muscles tensing beneath his healing wounds. That sound wasn't wolf, wasn't deer, boots. Human footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching through the frozen underbrush. Ghost was already on his feet, lips curled back in a silent snarl. The pack scattered into the shadows, but the old wolf remained, standing protectively over Kaiser. Through the trees, two figures emerged, men in tactical gear, rifles slung across their backs. Kaiser recognized the insignia on their shoulders instantly, the same unit that had abandoned him. One mercenary's eyes locked onto Kaiser. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "That's the K9 from the ambush." His hand moved toward his weapon. Kaiser's training kicked in before fear could. A sharp, commanding bark tore from his throat, not a plea for help, but a warning. The wolves answered. Howls erupted through the forest, echoing off the mountainsides like a spectral army. The mercenaries spun, rifles raised, but the trees gave up no targets. Ghost didn't flee. He stepped forward, hackles raised, teeth gleaming in the weak sunlight. The lead mercenary hesitated, his finger hovering over the trigger. "That wolf's rabid," he snarled. The gunshot shattered the stillness. Bark exploded from a tree beside them. Kaiser lunged, not at the men, but toward the frozen stream, drawing their fire away from Ghost. Pain screamed through his healing leg, but he kept moving. Another shot rang out, kicking up snow near his paws. Then, new voices. "Drop your weapons! Now!" Rangers in olive green jackets burst from the tree line, rifles trained on the mercenaries. Kaiser recognized the lead man, Cole Mitchell, the wildlife officer who'd left trail cameras in these woods. The mercenaries cursed, but raised their hands. As Cole secured the prisoners, his gaze found Kaiser, then flicked to Ghost. The wolf stood motionless, amber eyes unreadable. For a heartbeat, man and beast measured each other. Then Ghost turned, vanishing into the pines without a sound. Cole knelt beside Kaiser, hands trembling as he checked the dog's wounds. "You're safe now, soldier," he murmured. But as the ranger loaded Kaiser into his truck, the German shepherd kept watching the tree line. Some goodbyes needed no sound. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center hummed with quiet activity, the murmur of veterinarians, the occasional whine of recovering animals, the rhythmic beep of medical equipment. Kaiser lay on a thick, orthopedic pad near the window, his bandaged leg stretched carefully to the side. Sunlight streamed through the glass, warming his fur as he watched snowflakes drift past. 3 weeks had passed since his rescue, and though his body was healing, his spirit remained restless. The forest still called to him in his dreams. Cole Mitchell sat at his desk nearby, fingers drumming against a thick manila envelope stamped with official military insignia. His jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid with tension. He'd known this moment would come. The military never truly forgot their assets, but the cold finality of the typed letter still made his stomach clench. Per Department of Defense Protocol 227, K9 Unit Number K98149 is hereby recalled to active rehabilitation at Fort Carson K9 Division. The words blurred before Cole's eyes. He glanced at Kaiser, who had lifted his head, sensing the shift in the room. Those intelligent brown eyes held questions Cole couldn't answer. "They want you back, boy," he said quietly, crumpling the edge of the paper in his fist. The thought of surrendering Kaiser to the same system that had left him to die made acid rise in Cole's throat. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head veterinarian, stood in the doorway holding a tablet. "You need to see this," she said, her dark eyes alight with urgency. On the screen played a grainy video, security footage from Cole's own trail camera. There was Kaiser, wounded and trembling in the snow, with Ghost standing guard over him. Then came the mercenaries, their rifles raised, and Ghost refusing to retreat. The timestamp showed it had been uploaded anonymously just hours ago. "It's everywhere," Elena whispered. "News outlets are picking it up. They're calling it the Miracle of Silver Pine." Cole exhaled sharply as comments and shares ticked upward in real time. Save the War Dog trended alongside photos of Kaiser's military service. Veterans groups were organizing protests. Children sent crayon drawings of Kaiser and Ghost to the rehabilitation center. The public outcry was a tidal wave, and the military had no defense against it. His radio crackled to life. "Cole, we've got a situation at the gate," a ranger's voice reported. Through the window, Cole saw the black government SUV parked outside, 2 uniformed soldiers waiting stiffly by the entrance. But behind them, a growing crowd had gathered, protesters with signs, cameras flashing, voices raised in unison. Kaiser limped to Cole's side, pressing his warm weight against the ranger's leg. Cole rested a hand on the dog's head, feeling the steady pulse of life beneath his fingers. The soldiers at the gate exchanged uneasy glances as the chants grew louder. For the first time since the letter arrived, Cole smiled. The pre-dawn light painted the rehabilitation center in shades of blue when the knock came. 3 slow, deliberate raps that echoed through the empty hallway. Cole stirred from his cot beside Kaiser's enclosure, his hand automatically reaching for the German shepherd, who was already alert, ears pricked forward. There was something about that knock, a weight to it, a hesitation, that set Cole's nerves on edge. He opened the door to find a gaunt man in his mid-30s leaning heavily on a cane, his face a patchwork of scars and shadows. The visitor's military-issue jacket hung loose on his frame, and when he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I heard he was alive." Behind him, the first light of morning glowed gold along the treetops. Kaiser moved before Cole could react. The dog's nails clicked against the floor as he limped forward, his entire body trembling. For a frozen moment, man and dog simply stared at each other. Captain Vance's breath coming in short gasps, Kaiser's tail giving a single, tentative wag. Then Vance collapsed to his knees with a sob, his cane clattering to the ground. "They told me you didn't make it," Vance choked out, as Kaiser buried his muzzle in the man's neck, inhaling deeply, gunpowder and sweat, and the faintest trace of the cologne Vance had always worn, the scent of home. "I looked for you. God, I looked everywhere." His fingers tangled in Kaiser's fur, gripping like he was afraid the dog might vanish. Cole stepped back, his throat tight. He'd seen Kaiser flinch from strangers, growl at sudden movements, but now the dog leaned into Vance's touch with complete trust, his body relaxing in a way Cole had never witnessed. This wasn't just a handler and his canine. This was family. Vance's hands shook as they traced Kaiser's scars, the jagged shrapnel wound on his hip, the crooked set of his healing leg. "What did they do to you?" he whispered. Then, to Cole, "Who fixed him?" Cole crossed his arms. "A wolf, mostly." At Vance's stunned look, he gestured to the framed photo on the wall, a still from the viral trail camera footage, showing Ghost standing guard over Kaiser in the snow. Wild animals don't usually spare dogs, especially military ones, but that old wolf, he protected Kaiser like he was part of his pack. Vance's eyes glistened as he studied the photo. When he spoke again, his voice was raw. "I'm retiring next month. They're giving me a medical discharge." He scratched behind Kaiser's ears, the way Cole had learned the dog liked best. "I came to take him home." The words hung between them. Cole's chest ached. He'd known this day might come, but facing it now, Kaiser solved the dilemma for them. With a soft grunt, he positioned himself squarely between both men, his body touching each of them. Not choosing, connecting. Vance let out a wet laugh. "Guess that's my answer." He extended a hand to Cole. "Looks like we're sharing custody, Ranger." Outside, the rising sun set the frost ablaze. Somewhere in the distant woods, an old wolf might have been watching. But in that moment, with Kaiser's warmth pressed against them both, the past and the future finally made peace. Years melted into the mountains like winter snow giving way to spring. The rehabilitation center still stood, though Cole's hair had silvered at the temples, and the framed photo of Ghost now hung beside his desk with a small bronze plaque. "The wolf who taught us mercy." Vance visited every month without fail, his limp less pronounced with each passing year, always arriving with a duffel bag of Kaiser's favorite toys and a six-pack of beer for Cole. Kaiser aged gracefully, his muzzle turning frost white, his steps slower but still purposeful. On clear nights, he would sit on the porch between Cole and Vance, ears twitching at distant sounds only he could hear, perhaps remembering the whisper of pine needles under paw, or the golden gaze of a wolf who had defied nature itself. Then came the morning when Kaiser didn't rise from his bed. Cole found him curled on his side, breathing slow but even, his cloudy eyes fixed on the tree line beyond the window. Vance arrived within the hour, his face ashen. They built a nest of blankets by the fireplace, taking turns stroking Kaiser's fur as the day bled into twilight. At moonrise, a sound shattered the quiet, a single resonant howl that lifted the hairs on Cole's arms. Not from the woods, from the porch. Vance reached the door first. There, silhouetted against the full moon, stood Ghost. The old wolf was skeletal now, his coat ragged, one ear permanently torn, but his amber eyes burned with the same fierce intelligence as he locked gazes with Kaiser through the glass. A recognition passed between them, an understanding older than words. Kaiser stirred. With Cole and Vance supporting him, he managed 3 wobbly steps to the threshold. Ghost didn't approach, he simply bowed his head, then turned and vanished into the night. Kaiser sighed, his body going slack between his 2 humans. He wasn't gone, not yet, but the message was clear. When the end came a week later, they buried Kaiser beneath the lone pine where he'd loved to nap. The next morning, fresh wolf tracks circled the grave. And high on the ridge, if you listened very carefully, you might have heard 2 howls, one earthly, one spectral, blending into the wind. Cole and Vance never saw Ghost again. But sometimes, when the snow fell just right, they could almost make out 2 sets of paw prints leading deep into the wild, where legends, like old soldiers, finally rest,